This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for How to Super Age with Elise Marie Collins. I always like stumble on that, Elise, because it's like it's all about super aging, right?
This this is a show where you're going to learn how to super age.
Absolutely.
Because maybe we stumble on that because we sometimes think that's for somebody else, but how to super age. So, yeah, I get it. So we have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Noreen Stewart, and I'm really excited and very interested in what she's going to say today. And the great thing about it is I met Noreen through Karen, and they're old friends. So there's going to be layers today because Noreen has a very interesting career history, and I'm sure she's got a lot more other interesting things we don't know about. I've just read her resume, and she was in the New Jersey Symphony for 33 years as a double bassist. She's also now a bedside harpist. So we're going to learn about what a bedside harpist is. And she's played therapeutic harp. And I'm very interested in therapeutic harp because I teach restorative yoga. And when I used to teach in person, I had a few harpists come to class, and they actually were teenagers because my son went to school with two different harpists. And I know that harp is so therapeutic, just the sounds, even if you're not studying it for therapy. And I would invite the teenagers to come to class, and they would always have to have their parents drive them because, the harpist is so big. And they'd come to class, and then I would ask for donations for the musician, and they really enjoyed it. And my students enjoyed it. And they weren't even trained therapeutically, but I just think that instrument it's very magical, mystical. It reaches, I think, our souls on a deep level. So I can't wait to speak with you, Noreen. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe color in some of the things I might have missed in your resume or something interesting about you.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that Karen, who I don't remember ever a time not knowing Karen, who I called Kiki, because we lived next door to each other growing up in Detroit, and we were best friends, and we spent every day together. And so Kiki, I think it's funny that who would have thought when we were 8 years old we would be talking about how to super age.
We weren't going to get old.
I mean, that's just kind of funny. But anyway, yes. So, I mean, I started playing the bass, the double bass, the great big bass, shortly after my mother died. I was 14 years old. And we had a family friend who played the bass in the Detroit Symphony. And so I started taking lessons, and I did very well with that. I had taken piano lessons as a kid for, off and on for a few years, but it didn't grab me as much as the bass did. So I started playing the bass right before I started high school. My high school started in 10th grade, 10th, 11th, 12th. So I did extremely well with that. And so I just felt that was like what I wanted to do with my life. So I studied music at Wayne State University, and then at Cleveland Institute of Music. And so my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, he's from high school too. He went to Redford High School in Detroit. He played the violin and the viola. So after our studies at Cleveland Institute, we each auditioned for different orchestras. He got the orchestra job in New Jersey Symphony. I went to the Quebec City Symphony for 2 years. So I was in Canada, and that was a wonderful experience. Did that for a couple of years, and then there was eventually an opening in the New Jersey Symphony, and I took it, and I got the job. And so we got married, and the rest is history. But decades of playing it's a good orchestra. It doesn't, people don't recognize it as much as a really fine orchestra, because we're sandwiched between Philadelphia Orchestra and New York Philharmonic. So, but it is a really, really first class orchestra. So I enjoyed that for many decades. I had kind of a shoulder injury after years and years of playing the bass, and I don't know, that was hampering me a little bit. But so how did I get to the harp therapy? Let's see. I was going to a church for a while that, to make a long story short, they needed somebody to play keyboard because somebody left the church. So I found myself volunteering to play the keyboard at the church, even though my piano background was very sketchy. So I learned to play music with a lead sheet, which means instead of playing two stabs of music with the music written out for right hand and left hand, it's also what you would find in a fake book, which is the melody is written out, and then there are chord symbols for the bass, the chords. So, and then you learn how to do different accompaniments, and you make up your own arrangement. But that was easy for me. It came easily for me. So I played in the church for a year or two, and then that kind of dried up. And somebody told me about they had been a patient in the hospital, and a woman came in the hospital with a harp, a small harp, and played at the bedside. And they said it was the most amazing thing. I mean, it was so peaceful and so relaxing and so, I don't know, transforming. It was just amazing. So, I thought about that, and I thought, I wonder if there's some way I could do that on keyboard, maybe. So I opened the mail like at the same time, and I saw the flyer from our local hospital had a picture of a woman playing the small harp and in the hospital. And it explained about the program, and I thought, wow, I think I'm going to find out more about this. So I called the number, and it was Bedside Harp. I talked to Edie Elkin, who is a pioneer in the harp therapy and the harp therapy training field. So I called her and I said, your program sounds interesting, but couldn't I do it on, with a keyboard instead of a harp? I had no desire to play the harp, and she said, no, it has to be the harp. So I said, okay, thank you, goodbye. And then I heard somebody else mentioned about somebody in the hospital played for their mother-in-law who was very, very ill. And it was so amazing and peaceful and spiritual and wonderful. So I called Edie back and I said, can we talk some more about this? So she said, I'm going to be over at the hospital on Tuesday night. So why don't you come and we'll talk about it. So I went and I met her. And that night I signed up for the training. I rented a harp. I took my first lesson, and the rest is kind of history. I continued on with the symphony for another few years. And then I thought, what I really want to do, I want to devote, I've had a wonderful career with the symphony. I really want to devote myself to this healing work, so I retired from the symphony 2008.
It sounds like all the signs were there for you to follow. Like,
yeah,
you saw it so many places, which is something for super aging. Look for those signs, everybody that is listening. Look for, sometimes we almost fight our path a little. Like, I don't want to learn the harp. And I want to come back to your music, but I also want to hear about how you reconnected with Karen, because I remember hearing that you guys were estranged from each other. You grew up next door, and this happens to a lot of people in life. It's happened to me with friends and people I've even met traveling. I kind of wish there was social media back in the 1980s, because I met so many people when I traveled for 2 years who we didn't have social media. We just had snail mail, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like telling my son, oh, I met all these really interesting people. I have no idea whatever happened to them. So could you tell us a little bit about how you reconnected? Because this is a great story. I'm thinking, I haven't heard it myself, but please tell me and the listeners how you and Karen reconnected.
Well, Karen could tell you what she did to find me. You actually hired somebody, right, to look look me up.
So it's interesting. I have a cousin who is into genealogy, and my mother had asked many times over the years, are you in touch with Noreen? Do you know how Noreen and her father are doing? Did Noreen ever get married? And it'd be like, well, I remembered that she had gotten married because somehow we had connected back in those early days. But again, it was snail mail and it was phone calls. And back then, phone calls for long distance and cost money. So my cousin started doing some research and she found Noreen's father. And I wrote him a letter. And the funny part, Noreen, is that I never
I
connected.
didn't know that.
I didn't connect with your dad directly. Okay. But somehow
Uh-huh.
he I don't know if he told you that I contacted him or not.
I don't remember ever hearing that.
But then, Facebook, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to look her up. And luckily she still was using her maiden name, on her Facebook. And so it was like, look where she is. And I didn't know that you were playing for the New Jersey Symphony. And I
Mhm.
also had written to them, but they could
Really?
not tell me anything
Oh,
because it's private. It's,
oh.
so at one point they even told me I could come see the symphony, and it was like, well, I'm not coming all the way to New Jersey. But since
Wow.
we reconnected, we were very lucky that one day Noreen and her husband Mike were traveling from Detroit back home to New Jersey. And I said, well, if you're going through Cleveland, you have to stop. Um, and it was just amazing because it was like we had not missed a day when
Yeah,
each
yeah.
other again. And her husband Mike, it was like he knew me. It was like wonderful.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, he's heard a lot about you, So, yeah, that was amazing. I mean, before we connected I think I wasn't even in Facebook yet, but you gave me a phone call.
Right.
You called me and what? It was such a wonderful surprise. So anyway, yes, it's great to be reconnected again. And that was a long, long time ago. The last time before that meeting in Cleveland, last time we had seen each other, I think it was around 1960,
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's great. And
So did you move away, or was it just graduating from high school? How did you guys get disconnected?
Well, when we lived next door to Noreen, we moved away first. We moved to a different section of Detroit, but we still sort of kept in touch. And I remember when you moved to your new house, um, I know I was over there at least once.
mhm,
But then in 64, my family moved to Minneapolis. And so I
yeah,
was in Minneapolis for 4 years. And basically, we all sort of lost touch. But, you know, it's interesting. The neighborhood that Noreen and I grew up in, it was a combination of Jewish, Polish, Irish. It was cosmopolitan. Okay.
mhm,
And it's so interesting that back in the 50s and 60s, our families really connected.
yeah,
And, we all took care of each other. And
mhm,
I really miss that. It's like
yeah,
it wasn't about whether you were white, black, what your religion was. um, we all just got along, and
Yeah, that was special. That was special. I had, so the Jewish family on both sides.
yeah,
And, I remember your mother giving me bagels with, but first time I had loved bagels with butter, and seeing the menorah on the mantelpiece, just things that I would have not experienced, at all.
Yep.
So it was wonderful. Wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah.
That happens to so many people. We lose track of old friends. So I hope that this will spark some of our listeners to reach out to someone, or, sometimes we do look them up on Facebook, and it can be a little bit of a hurdle. Some people I know are not on Facebook, or sometimes I don't, like some of the traveling buddies that I met, I don't know their last name. I'm going to look up in my diary. So just encouraging everybody to take the extra mile, because friends are so important as we age. Our support and our memories become so very important.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I know a lot of people are hesitant to be on Facebook because, the privacy issues and all that, but we wouldn't have reconnected, or our other neighbors from North Lawn, or people that you would never know. I mean, even distant relatives that you would never, you haven't seen in decades and decades. I mean, it's a wonderful way to connect. So it's especially the past year, right? It's great to have those connections.
I agree. Yeah, we won't get into the negativity about Facebook, but there is definitely positive. There's positive and negative along with many things in life. So could you tell us maybe a couple stories about experiencing or experiences you've had as a bedside harpist? I'm wondering what it's like to go into hospitals. I think you're going into hospitals, Noreen, and some of the responses you've gotten from patients, maybe positive and negative. I'm really curious how that works in the real, because that's real life, not Facebook.
Yeah. So so I went through an extensive training program with Bedside Harp, where we learned how to play at the bedside. It's you never, when you walk into the hospital, I mean, we play for patients, for visitors. I play in the ER, I play in the ICU, I play in waiting areas, I play in the elevator. I have a small therapy harp, and so much of the training is to play appropriately for the condition that the patient is in. If someone is very, very ill, you would play much differently than you would play for somebody who's dressed, waiting to be released to go home. If someone is hysterical, you would play in a different way to calm them. And there's some very effective ways to do that. I remember one experience, well, several, but one in particular where I went in the emergency room. You never know what to expect. And I heard a man's voice yelling. He was hysterical. Oh no, oh, he's freaking out. Just really. And so I went toward the source of the voice, and you can kind of see in the little cubicles there's a curtain, but I could see in there. And this man, there were two staff people trying to calm him, to get him to sit down, put on like a gown to wait for the doctor he was just hysterical. So I stood just outside the cubicle, and he was going, oh. So, I would pick a tempo that was where he was at, something very lively and kind of matched where he was, not a familiar tune, but just some kind of improvising. And then I gradually just slowed it down. Very gradually slowed it down and slowed it down. And he slowed down with me. And it took about 15, 20 minutes. And he eventually just laid down on the bed and was just waiting there quietly. And a doctor nearby said, boy, that really works. But, you know, we are trained to, there's a thing called entrainment, you know, where your body responds to, it can't help but respond to, you know, like a lively beat or, you know, rock music or something, how you physically respond and how your body respond. You can't help it, you know, it's just part of our makeup that we respond to what we're hearing. Their vibrations, you know, that are communicated. And so this was, you know, a very clear example of what happened with him. You know, I deliberately just slowed it down and breathed myself. You know, we play with intention. One of the differences between like playing harp performance or, you know, I'm not a performer necessarily. It's very different from performing. Harp therapy would be simpler playing, more space between the notes, you know, so there is space, there is peace, there is, you know, it's just much more open. And, you know, as I said, you can see patients relax when you just slow down that tempo. So I've had other experiences, you know, kids getting stitches in the emergency room. The one doctor, you know, saw, it was a little kid about 4, you know, getting stitches and hysterical, you know, and the doctor saw me standing just outside the cubicle and he said, oh, you know, come in, we need you, you know. So I played, you know, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or something. And I played it, you know, very slowly kind of, and he just quieted right down. I mean, it's a distraction too, but it was something that he knew, you know, a song he knew. And so, you know, there are tons of experiences like that.
I wonder what's the difference between therapeutic harp and bedside harp. You alluded to that, and I'm just wondering if you could clarify for our listeners what the difference is.
No difference.
Oh, okay.
Harp is harp therapy. I'm a certified harp therapist. So, you know, we do an internship in the hospital where the people doing the internship play for patients and, you know, get experience. You know, so many hours you have to have before you can graduate. We focus on playing by ear because when you go into a hospital room, you're not going to carry a music stand and, you know, the whole thing. You want to be able to get out of the way if you need to. So it's mostly learning by ear. And so we have to know there are so many different songs that we might be called upon to play. Sometimes people will request something, you know, a patient will say, oh, do you know, I'll be with you in apple blossom time or something like, you know. And so we have to have a wide range of repertoire from different genres that we learn. And if you were to think of memorizing all kinds of music, it would be difficult, but we develop the ability to play by ear. So if you can sing a tune, you can learn to play it by ear.
What's the craziest song that someone ever requested from you?
Wipeout.
The surf tune
On the harp. I
60s.
I did pass out on that. Pass up on that because somehow that just that's a drum big thing. But anyway, I just wanted to mention too while we're together that I teach for bedside harp. I'm a teacher. I've been doing that for 16 years or so at least, and I help train people to go into the harp therapy field. So, I mean, while we do learn how to, you know, work with some written music, a lot of the training is learning to play by ear and improvising. And because there are times when you don't want to play a familiar tune. And I would just like to tell you about some of the students that have come to me. I mean, talking about super aging. First of all, when you say students, people think, oh, it's kids. It's not kids. Most of my students, 99% of them, are people over the age of 50. I would say even the average probably 60 or so. And a lot of times, people have raised their family, and the kids are gone, empty nest, and they want to do something for themselves. They want to do something to give back. And so it's great. I mean, and no matter what your level is, it's easy to make the harp sound good. It's not like learning to play the violin or something, which takes real patience and a long time before you can even, get a sound that sounds good. But so I've had students come to me. Sometimes we give the lessons in the lobby of the hospital. So sometimes people will approach and say, oh, I was a patient and you played for me, and I want to learn how to do what you do. And they will sign up for lessons. Or sometimes I have nurses that say, oh, I would love to learn how to do that, So, all kinds of people come with various backgrounds in music. Some people have, played piano when they were a little kid, or some people are music teachers that are retired and they know a lot about music, or they might be a professional singer that just decides, or they might be somebody who knows nothing about music at all. Zero. They don't know what a quarter note is. They don't know anything. And so that is a challenge for me, but I love it because you have to kind of get in their brain and recognize, what is coming easily for them and what, how to make it work for them.
How many bedside harpists are there trained right now in the US, and is it worldwide? I mean, approximately. I have no idea. Is it like 100 or 1,000 or 20,000?
It's quite a few. I mean, Bedside Harp is one of the main people, the groups that do that. But there are other places, on the West Coast and different places where they train people to play at the bedside. So I would like to tell you about one student in particular, though, that because it really fits in with the theme of super aging. So
love to hear it.
Yeah. So this woman came for lessons. She signed up for lessons. She was, I don't know, maybe late 50s. I will call her Mary. That's not her real name. And she wanted to learn how to play the harp. So I said, okay. She was very accomplished in whatever she did with the rest of her life, her professional life. And she raised 2 kids and she wanted to learn how to play the harp. Okay. Zero music background, zero, didn't know anything. So, I've had students like that before. And I said, well, if you can sing a tune, you can learn how to play it by ear. Well, the problem with Mary was that she couldn't sing a tune. She could not match a pitch. She couldn't, I would say, can you sing, Mary Had a Little Lamb or something, da, 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 da. She could not do it at all. And, what happens with these people is somehow in their childhood, most of us pick that up, kind of automatically. I don't know, but somebody must have told her, you can't sing. Keep your mouth shut. Don't, forget it. Don't sing, So she didn't even try. And she did not learn how to match a pitch. So we had to go through the process of talking about what pitch was. And, I said, can you match this pitch? Da, she go, da, it seemed impossible. And I was saying, can you tell when the pitch goes up or when it goes down? And, it was just not clicking. So, we started talking about the way people learn to speak. you know, when toddlers are learning to speak, you're not only learning words, but you're learning inflections of how, you know, we don't speak in a monotone. You know, we will, if we're asking a question, we'll go, what did you mean? Or you got to be kidding. You know, I mean, there's ups and downs with the inflection, which we all, that's music. And there's a phrasing to the way we speak, right? It's not just in a monotone. You know, we say, how about that? Or, well, that's really interesting. Or, you know, so it's a phrase. It's actually musical. It's a phrase. It has ups and downs. So I had her paying attention to the way people speak, and, you know, can you say this? Holy moly! Or, you know, and she could do that. You know, wow, you are amazing. Or, you know, so she got the idea, and we just worked with, you know, duh. Can you match that pitch? You know, duh. You know, a little higher. You know, higher, a little higher. Finally, she hit the pitch I was doing. Bingo. You know, it was it. And I said, that's it. You found it. Duh. Can you do it again? And she was like, you know, a little higher. You got it before. Duh. And you know, that is muscle memory too. I mean, what we do with our hands is muscle memory. But when you sing a pitch, when you match a pitch, your vocal cords are in a certain position. Your larynx is in a certain position, right? So that's muscle memory too. Remember how this felt, Mary? You know, duh, duh. And to make a long story short, she learned how to play by ear. I mean, but she was like thrilled. You know, you can imagine being in your late 50s and some skill you thought you never could do, never ever. You just didn't have an aptitude. She figured it out. Wonderful.
That
She was thrilled and I was thrilled. And so that's one of my, you know, that's a super aging story, right? And she went on to graduate through the program and the mastery level too. So she's like the poster child. She was amazing. So I have just loved, you know, the teaching and the playing
it sounds like you're an amazing teacher. You came up with creative solutions and didn't get frustrated when your student couldn't, you know, I mean, that sounds like it would be frustrating for a musician. I'm not a musician, but I have a lot of musicians in my family, and I know they get frustrated. That's why I don't want to play music in front of them, because they're like, oh, you sound, you know that. And it's interesting because I once took a course, I actually took it several times, and it was a student of mine that would come and play therapeutic music. And she also gave a course called Free Your Voice, where she taught people to free their voice. Now, what was interesting and what I loved about her course was her name is Amber Field, you can look her up. She taught people that were like the student you were talking about, or me, who didn't think or have, you know, this training. I don't think of myself as a singer and I can easily go off key. And she would teach accomplished musicians, because she would find that the accomplished musicians had so much perfection that they were not as free. So it was a beautiful thing to see all these different levels and how we work together. And then when we all harmonized, she would put us in groups, and she'd have somebody who was good at getting those pitches with someone like me that needed a lot of help and entrainment, as you were saying. So I think you're speaking to so many things. And I just wanted to underline for those who are listening, who want to super age, that it's really important to do things that are very challenging. You know, we want to give up, you know, we kind of want to be like, I'm just going to retire on the beach. And, but when we do those things, as you evoked in your story, we get so much out of it. And it really helps our brain. It helps our confidence. There's so many levels. It's also good to do the things we just love and come easily for us. But that's kind of a saying in yoga: do the things that are very challenging, do the things you hate, or they're hard for you, and then do the things you love, not the in-between.
Right. And then you have to be willing to feel stupid or in the beginning, we all do.
Absolutely.
And especially, I've had like a couple of 80-year-olds 80-year-old students that, or one had a stroke and she was very limited. But I mean, I had admired her attitude so much for being willing to try it at 80, 81 after she had a stroke. I mean, she learned to play very simply, but she enjoyed it. And I mean, she inspired the heck out of me. She was great. You know, that's really important to have that attitude, like you're saying, and of learning something that does not come easily to you. Challenge yourself.
Absolutely.
Good for the brain.
Did you want to add anything about learning something new or doing what you love, Karen? Because I know you do what you love.
Well, I do, but you know, it's interesting hearing this story, Noreen, because growing up, your religious training was really, you know, away from medicine, and now you're playing in hospitals.
I know.
And I find that so amazing. Number one, you grew in such a way that you understand how medicine has an effect,
Of
okay,
course,
and it's necessary. Um, and yet there are so many other things that make us um, heal ourselves, okay? I know when my mom had her stroke, uh, my brother insisted that we only play jazz music on her TV.
Hmm.
And what a difference when that music was playing.
Mm-hmm.
She still, you know, had no concept that she was blind, but yet, you know, she felt free and you could see it in her body movements.
Mm-hmm.
She was
Mm-hmm.
one of those, her, you know, caregivers changed it to a soap opera or something else.
Mm-hmm.
She would get really rigid. Okay.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And again, you know, I had my vocal cords snipped accidentally during a surgery. So I don't, you know, I don't feel like I can sing. And I've never, haven't tried all of these years. But when my mom was going through this, I was singing to her some of the Yiddish songs that she used to sing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, between the jazz and that, I know I was off key, but it was the melody, it was moving her. And it's just unbelievable that,
Yeah, it's so powerful.
yeah,
It's so powerful. I have played for dementia patients. I've done that for years too in an assisted living place. And some of the people there, you know, it's like usually a big room, a big sitting room, you know, and some of the people are just slumped over and they seem like totally out of it, you know. And then you play a song that they remember and they perk up and they know all the words. They know the words better than I know. I don't sing that much. I mean, that's another challenge to remember what I'm doing and then sing all the words too. But you know, they could go through all the verses and then when it's over, they're back again. But you would swear that they were totally out of it altogether, and that just brings them back to life. You know,
yes,
so it is so powerful.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Music really is powerful. I think it affects a different part of our brain. Also, what you said about language is really true from what I know about neuroscience. The language is some of the first tracking in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps that student that you had her tracking in the beginning, we don't know what happened with, I don't know that much about your student, but maybe something was off in her language tracking. But what you're saying she did was she actually we can rewire our brain. And neurogenesis, they used to think neurogenesis, which is growing new neurons in your brain, stopped after a certain age. I can't even remember, but it's ridiculous because we now know that we can continually regenerate our brains. And
Yeah.
music playing and music listening are great ways to grow new brain cells.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I mean, yeah, and that people would be willing to try, you know, at an advanced age too. That's great.
That's what I like to encourage people to do. Keep trying, keep going, and you want to do things that are enjoyable and easy. And again, try things that you haven't tried and be willing to be frustrated. That's literally what super aging is all about. Is there anything else that either of you want to share with our listeners today? Any tips or anything that you thought of that we didn't get to in this interview?
Well, I just want to tell people they need to reach out to the people that they know next door, their families, and dig deep inside yourself and find those people and those memories from your past. This week has been a special one for me, knowing that we were going to be doing this interview. I couldn't wait to do it. And it also coming, at the time of spring, Passover, and Easter, and all those wonderful memories that we have.
Mhm.
It's so important to bring those memories out and share them,
Mhm.
because it opens up our hearts. And
Mhm.
I'm sure that, the two of you see this a lot, that, we may be feeling sorry for ourselves. We've been locked in the house for the past year. Okay.
Mhm.
But I know yesterday when I posted some family pictures, I felt so good. I saw myself as a baby, and then I saw myself, as an 8-year
I
old.
loved it.
Yeah.
I love them. Yeah.
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 And it was
I
like,
love them. Yeah.
it's like, wow, this is part of who I am. And now, like you said, I can look at myself in the mirror and say, this is who I am now. And that's okay. You know,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
age is just something that if we don't gain another year, we're not here to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
And I like, Elise, what you were saying, that it's like everything you do in your life kind of leads to the next thing when you connect the dots. It's so interesting that, and Kiki, I didn't realize that you had such a passion for communications and broadcasting and all that, but you finally, right,
Right.
in your 59, I think you said you went back to school, and
Yep.
I think that's awesome. I think that's great. And what a wonderful thing that you're bringing people positive messages and new ideas, and both of you, it's great. But all of our life experience up to this point
Absolutely.
has contributed to that.
Wow.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that our listeners can continue to listen to all the podcasts on New Cleveland Radio, and also look up a friend, look up someone, or sometimes, we are in touch, but we sort of don't call a friend for maybe a year or two. So my hope for you all today and wish is that you call up someone you know from your past, preferably your childhood. If you can contact somebody, look them up, say, hey, get in touch, open your heart. Thank you so much for listening.
We'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank